of the insights that you gave us in this report, when you think about, it's not new news when we talk about this limited inventory and the price increases. I think the really new news in there is this idea of the new map. You call it the new map. Can you talk about that a little bit?
What we've seen out of this pandemic is that there's markets that I don't think we ever anticipated to be as driven as they are now, as these major secondary markets, major markets. I think you and I both know, and when I was originally in New York and now here, we always looked at these global wealth hubs, and they were always kind of the same ones, these cities where the ultra wealthy purchased. There was always these list of 5 to 10 that were very common and focused on. Now it's expanded. So there's secondary markets that have taken a primary focus, but even within those secondary markets, there's additional secondary markets coming out of this. It's the amount of new markets that are being developed are incredible. So it's almost like a domino effect in that you have this one major kind of hub or this one region, and it just continues to flow out. And I really think it's the desire for space. It's some people who want to be back towards near where there's a lot of cultural events happening. It's really a mix. It's this new next normal.
And what's really interesting is you talked about the global cities.
Yep.
Okay. Those aren't going to change, but they're going to be added to in a greater number as the wealth grows, right? And so you think about Texas is not new news.
No.
Austin, Texas is not new news. San Antonio, Texas, right, where you have a huge presence of for Coldwell Banker is kind of the newest growth area. And sure, 20 years ago with how the population was growing for sure, but that's an example of not just a global center, but suddenly, what about folks moving there?
Oh yeah.
And then outside of those areas, right, Michael?
Yep, completely. It's interesting, Diane. Those regions, Texas is doing so well now. I've never seen, and I know you're in Texas. There's a lot of people from California looking at Texas too, and vice versa. It's always these two states. It's like the new commute almost. It's like the new commute between the two. But it's crazy the fact that not crazy. It's amazing these markets, but the focus on it. I have friends too, and this is not just there's not certain demographics or certain, it's everywhere. It's this mix that I can work from a different, like people aren't now constricted to certain cities. They're not even constricted. They're not bound by where their offices are as much because there's remote work. We are, or there's a hybrid model and they can move a little further out. But I know so many people, they're permanently remote,
Yeah.
I'm permanently remote.
You are.
But
like the idea that you have a center, right? And then you have a good airport.
Yes.
And you have fiber.
Yes.
You
work from wherever you want.
Wherever you want. And so these areas that nobody really thought about. Tennessee, right? Tennessee is now suddenly a luxury capital.
Yes.
In the US for folks in the US.
Yeah.
And I just, and I love those stories.
Like Nashville is on the scene more than ever. And I'm actually going to Nashville later this year. I can't wait. I mean, the music scene there is unbelievable. And the focus on that city, and it's so popular. I've never been. I grew up on the East Coast. I've never been.
Yeah. Well, so here's a really sort of fun fact when you think about Nashville.
Yeah.
It's at the, the peak of its growth right now. And so when you think about Nashville and the city and the music and all that, what it has is land.
Yes.
There's a lot of leafy land areas, and that's the other part of health, sustaining, right? Outdoor space. And people are willing to drive an extra 20 minutes when they do leave their house to get that. Now, that doesn't mean that the attached market, which was shrinking, right? The condo, it was shrinking and now it's grown double digits, right?
Correct. Well, I also think too, what we're going to see when we look at the attached market during, the past few months, we've had a lot of supply chain constraints, especially on the new construction part of that.
Yes.
So as those pieces ease, new construction will take a larger focus in this. And again, certain locations that are just driven with new construction will really, they've already, like New York City has already seen so much come back. my old bread and butter out there where I where I grew up. But so much has been, a new focus of that. But it's interesting to see, Diane. So many of these regions will continue to be a new focus as we embrace the next 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. It'll be great to see the focus on this.
This idea of what's next.
Yeah.
One of the trends that you and I have talked about that we wanted to zero in on for today is this idea that 70% of people that have more than $5 million have a second home.
Yes, they do.
Right. And
Yeah.
talk about a market opening. And that's where these secondary markets are coming from. Right. So
Big time. Big time. And it's the secondary markets, and there's this kind of blurred line in between primary and secondary residences too that we've
yes.
seen. There's
Mhm.
this want for, perhaps there's certain secondary residences, but the primary residences to become even larger. So a lot of people, at one point kind of upsized, they kind of went larger. They wanted more space. This was this immediate need to add. But now it's the fact that it's such a safe haven within United States real estate that they want this secondary home to add to the portfolio. So you talked about, asset diversification, increasing the portfolio. Real estate is on an upward trajectory with
Right.
prices. So it's a safe haven. So it's this blend now too, now that we're looking at primary, secondary, and then even tertiary. So it just continues to grow, and we'll see it. And then obviously as more people come into the country from international, it'll be a
Right.
whole focus.